All right, I want to call the Finance and Law Subcommittee to order. It's Wednesday, December 18th, 2019, and this will be our last Finance and Law Subcommittee meeting for the year.
And the term.
So, under the agenda, we have roll call. Mr. Souza.
Present.
Mr. Fiore.
Present.
Also in attendance, we have Superintendent Cabral and Assistant Superintendent Monahan. First item on the agenda is student activity requests. There aren't any. Second item is bills payable in the amount of $490,035.26.
Move approval as presented.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. And finally, we get a facilities update. Ms. Monahan?
Sure. We just want to let you know that we have been putting in water filling stations in all of our schools. The only two schools that are needing the installation will be Bennett and Parker. So those are the last two. So all other schools will have at least water filling station where kids can bring their own refillable water bottles, and it does have a counter. So every time a child fills a bottle, it'll tell you how many bottles it has saved, a plastic bottle. So it's really neat to see that as well. So again, that we have two left, and that is to be at Bennett and Parker. I attended today's construction meeting for the Mulcahy, brand new Mulcahy School. We are at 52% completion, and we started working on a timeline of when furniture will be delivered, when we are going to be moving things out of both Mulcahy and Hopewell. So that those dates, once we become a little bit more secure in our dates, but of course nothing is ever fully secured because of construction, we will be sharing that with everyone. So it's exciting.
And weather.
Construction and weather, and it's been fun so far.
And Mr. Chairman, through you,
Mr. Souza?
thank you. 52%, we're about halfway in the timeline. So everything seems to be lining right up. I don't know if the stars are going to line up too, but
Sure hope so.
it seems like we're moving right along.
And the timeline that we saw at the meeting yesterday goes along with the timeline that you presented at the last school committee meeting, as far as the educational piece versus the construction piece.
Right.
The two kind of mesh together. So things are moving.
It sure is. Thank you.
And through you to Mr. Chairman, to Ms. Moynihan, and to yourself and Mr. Cabral, I know I was contacted a while back by some concerned citizens that before Mulcahy is destroyed, that they wanted to do, the citizens that have gone through there wanted to do, have like an open house there and have a walk through and reminisce and look at the building for one last time. So I think it would be important to have, before the construction people get in there, is to have one community day that people can walk through the building and see it for this final time.
Next meeting.
Actually, that's something that we probably should have put on our timeline, because that is something that Mrs. Dakuda and I have discussed, is having a community nights for the citizens or former students to be able to go through the building one last time. It's actually become a very common occurrence with new construction. I know they're planning to do the same thing at my alma mater, BMC Durfee High School, so I plan to get one more tour before my former high school is torn down as well. So we will plan the same in Taunton for all our Mulcahy Middle School and elementary school students who attended the building in the past.
And I don't even know, maybe we should have one for Hopewell too. I don't know if...
Yeah, we could do both.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Thank you.
Maybe I can get a room at Walker School when it becomes housing.
There you go.
You should.
Come full circle.
Never know.
I'm thinking about it.
Why not?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion
would be in order.
to adjourn.
Unless there's anything else?
No, that's it.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
A motion made and second. All those in favor to
Aye.
adjourn? Aye. Opposed? So voted. We're adjourned.
Good job, team.
Very good.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous must fight. O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
David has it. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Lord, as we begin this session, let us acknowledge your goodness and mercy and ask your blessings on all our deliberations. We thank you for this opportunity to be of service to our community and to the young people entrusted to our care.
Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Mrs. Doherty? Mr. Souza?
Present.
Mr. Martin?
Present.
Mrs. Almeida is present. Mr. Chairman?
Present.
Mr. Fiore?
Present.
Mr. DeMello?
Present.
Mrs. Fagan?
Present.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Next order of business is approval of minutes December 4th, 2019, and November 13th, 2019.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Next item, Student Council Representative Report. Ms. Quinn, please.
Good evening, members of the school committee. I'm Aislinn Campbell, representing Taunton High School. I'll start with the 2 concerts we held last week. We had an excellent band concert on the 10th. 4 bands performed. A total of 235 kids performed. The THS Chorus concert was on the 12th. 3 choruses performed: mixed choir, concert choir, and select chorus. A total of 118 students performed. DECA mock interviews were also held Thursday night. It was the 3rd annual mock interviews. 280 students registered. BP and Apponequet attended as well. 43 judges volunteered, including alumni and professionals. Taunton High held an advisory yesterday which was holiday themed. We did some holiday trivia and Jeopardy and were able to play games and bond with the upper and lower classmen. The Access Center is sponsoring a de-stress day for faculty tomorrow. They will be able to come to the Access Center during their free block to de-stress. They will be able to play with dogs and enjoy food and raffles. The winter sports season started last week. Our first-year coach, Amy Siggins, took the basketball team to their first win last week. Boys and girls track also won last Friday. With that, the Tiger Tots also have their holiday show tomorrow. With that, my report is complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell.
Move we accept the report.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Have a wonderful evening, Ms. Campbell.
Thank you.
I'll ask Mr. Pawlowski if you'd like to come join us as a guest up here. There's no opposition from the committee. I'd like to invite Mr. Pawlowski up to sit in Ms. Campbell's seat.
Please do.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Please join us, Mr. Pawlowski. There's no public input this evening? Yes, Dan. You can stay if you'd like. You can take my seat.
Next meeting.
Next meeting. Next item on the agenda is presentation of rings to Taunton High School baseball team, the Massachusetts State Champion Taunton High baseball team. Mr. Cabral, please.
Thank you. So it's with great joy and great pleasure that we welcome our athletic director, Mr. Otto Vianelli, who will be leading this evening's ceremony as we recognize our state championship baseball players. So, Mr. Otto Vianelli, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Cabral, and thank you to the school committee for having us here tonight. This was a wonderful run. These boys, we are very, very proud of these young men. The adversity that they overcame early in the season and their ability to work together as a team. Not one person stood above the team. There was a different person every game that stepped up, and we're just extremely, extremely proud of them. I'd like to bring Mr. Matos up, our headmaster, to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Ottavinelli, and I guess you could say you'd have to go back to 1999. Blair Bork graduated from Taunton High School. He was a great baseball player there. He went on to play college at Texas A&M, finished up at Corpus Christi, played a little independent ball down there, and when you get to that level, you learn some things about the game, and you pick some things up. And Coach Bork has done an excellent job, like Mr. Ottavinelli said, teaching our young men the finer nuances of the game of baseball. He himself was a 5-tool player, and he was just one of the best that I've seen at Taunton High School, and I've been there for a while. And what he did with this club was amazing in terms of how he brought them together and how he kept them together. And what was the most important thing for me is how they wanted to play for him. So I'm very proud of not only Coach Blair Bork, but all the players that are back there today, all great men in the hallways, in the classrooms, in the cafeteria, down in the field house. They carry themselves with great emphasis inside our building, and I truly appreciate everything that they have done for Taunton High School. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
I'd like to next introduce our head coach, Blair Bork.
Thank you very much. Awesome words. Thank you, Mr. Matos or Coach Matos. But I've been saying it all along. I didn't throw any pitches. I didn't hit any balls. It was all them. And I did challenge them at the beginning of the year. Last year we had a meeting, and we had faced some adversity the prior year, and I think that that made me as a coach grow a lot. And I think the players that were returning also, they were influenced by some of the things that had happened, and I think they were accepting the role that they were given. And I think we challenged them to be committed, and basically from day one, they worked their tails off in the weight room, captain's practices, in the classroom, making sure they're academically eligible. And I'm really fortunate to have kids that are exceptional students. Obviously, they showed how good they are on the field, but it goes without saying that if you're not academically eligible, you're not going to play. And every single one of them, they do a great job showing their leadership in the school, in the classroom, and on the field. And obviously, Coach Otto already talked about some of the adversity that we faced at the beginning of the year, and I think that helped us when it did come playoff time. And everybody stepped up. There's not a player over there that didn't contribute in some manner, whether they played or not. They played an important role in winning the championship, and I don't think we would have won had it not been for every single one of those guys. And I've mentioned to, or I've talked to two personally after the game, and they know who they are, but they didn't play a single inning. And I don't think that we win without their contributions, basically as role players, and it's really important. I don't think you get to that level. And every team that we faced along the way was a really good team. So what separated us from those other teams, and I think it was the camaraderie and the adversity that we faced early on. Those challenges helped us when it really mattered. And the way they came together, it was phenomenal. It was really fun to watch, and everybody that was there and had a part in it knows exactly what we're talking about. And the only negative of winning that last game was that there wasn't a game after that. And, I think after, was it the Lincoln-Sudbury game, we kind of talked and we were saying, we don't want this to end. We really, it wasn't about winning. It was just being together and really caring about each other. And, I think they showed that from day one. And, each team has its own
challenges that they face throughout the course of the season, but when we face those challenges, it wasn't pointing fingers, it wasn't blaming other people. They basically rallied around each other, and we were better off for it. And I am super proud to lead them. And each team is different, but this is something that is obviously very special, and I will cherish forever. So thank you, guys.
So we have a couple of student athletes on this team that are not able to be here tonight. Logan Lawrence and Daniel McDougall are playing in the basketball game at Taunton High School right now against Oliver Ames. And Andrew Gomes is hopefully playing goalie and not letting anything in. We're playing sandwich over at the ice rink. So those three young men weren't able to come. All right, gentlemen, Coach will call up your name. We'll present your ring and your plaque, and then you'll go around and meet everybody at the school committee, okay?
First up, Jared Roderick. Evan Mello. Lucas Martins. Elijah Marshall. Kurt Marshall. Justin Rollo. Jack Ryan. Captain Josh LaJoy. Actually, I should have said Evan too. Evan Mello was a captain too. I forgot about that part. Nolan Mello. Gavin Leahy. Joe Crawford. Ryan McDougall. No, this is 14, so I think I switched them. Hey, I think I switched you guys. Sean Quinlan. Yeah. Oh, it is? Sorry. Nick Notarangelo. Ty Cali. Colton Fagan. Matt Ferrara. Kobe Laravere. Cold? Cold. Captain Jack Moynihan. Colin Quinlan. Connor, sorry. Connor Quinlan. I always do that to you, don't I? Sorry. And special thanks to the assistant coaches that make all this happen. Ben Kistner. Sorry. Okay. I'm still new at this. Aaron Rigo. Jared Hebert. Chad Higginbotham.
And last but not least, our head coach, Blair Bork. Now you can wear it.
Thank you.
Once again, we'd like to thank everyone for their support, the high school administration, central office, school committee, parents, our faculty and staff, but especially our kids. So thank you very much.
I would entertain a motion to take a 5-minute recess.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted.
Is going to top what we just experienced with the baseball team, but I'll be brief and I'll be to the point. So we have some more students to celebrate at Taunton High School and the Taunton Alternative High School. So the Taunton Public Schools, as you are aware, is a member district at the Southeastern Educational Collaborative. So earlier this year, you may recall that 2 high school students were presented with the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Academic Excellence Award. The award was created to recognize senior students who have selected the most rigorous course of study in their local high schools and have succeeded in that course of study because of their hard work and the support of their teachers and their families. In conjunction with the MASS Academic Excellence Award, the Southeast Educational Collaborative established the Francis W. Galashaw Memorial Scholarship Award. The scholarship is given annually to high school students who have distinguished themselves in the pursuit of academic excellence in service to their community. The superintendents belonging to the South Coast Educational Collaborative, along with their respective high school principal, presented each student with their award at a luncheon held on Thursday, December 12th at Stonehill College. This is the 34th year that the collaborative superintendents have made such presentations collectively. The award is presented to high school students from each of the following member districts: Berkeley Public Schools, Dartmouth Public Schools, Dayton-Rehoboth Regional Public Schools, Freetown-Lakeville Public Schools, Seekonk Public Schools, Somerset Public Schools, Somerset Berkeley Regional High School, Swansea Public Schools, and last but not least, Taunton Public Schools. I do want to note that this was the first year that 2 students from Taunton Public Schools was recognized. We had 1 student from Taunton High School and 1 student for the first time ever recognized from the Taunton Alternative High School. So the student from Taunton High School was recognized was Demi LaForest. Demi is ranked number 1 in her class. She is a Harvard Book Club recipient. She is the vice president of Class 2020. She is also the vice president of the African American Club, a member of the math team and the Tenacity Club. She plans to major in computer science and biological engineering. She served as an intern this summer in the Taunton Public Schools Superintendent's Office, and most recently, Demi was accepted into MIT. So we're very, very, very proud of Demi. Also from the Taunton Alternative High School was senior Sarah Peckman. Sarah is a member of the Taunton Alternative High School Student Council. She is an honors level student at the Taunton Alternative High School in all her academic classes. She mentors classmates and younger students throughout the district. She is also a member of the Taunton High School Symphonic Band, and she is currently enrolled in Bristol Community College, where she is earning dual credit. So if you are following at home, she attends 3 schools: Taunton Alternative High School, Taunton High School, and Bristol Community College. Outstanding young lady. She is also a member of the South Shore Chaos Softball Program. She has applied to UMass Dartmouth, the Boston University, Bridgewater State University, Emerson College, UMass Amherst, and Suffolk University. So congratulations to both Demi and to Sarah. We have an update regarding the Taunton Alternative High School accelerated repair project, so I'm going to skip to the middle paragraph. On November 21st, engineers, inspectors, and consultants were on site to take samples of the roof and inspect the roof. On December 10th, the consultant returned to Taunton Alternative High School to continue the inspection. The visits will provide the owner's project manager with drawings to submit a comprehensive schematic submittal to the MSBA in February. Once approved, the project will be listed in the Central Register and a request for general subbids in March with the selection of the lowest responsible bidder to be conducted on April 3rd, 2020. We anticipate that the roof project will begin on or around June 21st and have substantial completion by August 28th, 2020. So this project not only includes a new roof, it also includes new windows and new doors at the Taunton Alternative High School. And as our high school representative mentioned earlier, we had the third mock district competition located at the presentation room at Taunton High School. As she mentioned, 280 students registered for the event. There were over 30 students from Bristol Plymouth who attended, and also 43 volunteers, and I believe half of the school committee, or a large number of school committee members, also served as judges. I had the pleasure of serving as a judge as well. The mock competition started 2 years ago to prepare students for district competition, which will be held on January 9th and 10th in 2020. The experience and feedback from the professional judges is critical for the competitors. The judges range from members of the Taunton High School Business Department, school administrators, central office administrators, and school committee, alumni, and other industry professionals. So Decker is off to a great start this year. They have several goals that they are looking to accomplish this year. They want to increase that membership. They are 17 away from 300. That would be a unanimous feat. They are also on the cusp of starting the middle school Decker program, and I believe they are nearing the first episode of the DECA TV program on TCAM, and I've also listed some fundraisers. If any of the school board members wish to attend, they are listed there for you, so please put them on your calendar. And then some superintendent talking points that I want to discuss. I've had the pleasure of attending 4 middle school and high school concerts. I have one more concert to attend tomorrow, which will be the Parker Middle School concert. I have to say the numbers are outstanding. We have a nice problem, as I like to say. Our middle schools are not large enough to house our bands and our chorus. That's why they are having the concerts at Taunton High School. That's the only venue in town that's large enough. So we are bursting at the seams when it comes to band and chorus at our middle schools. I also want to mention that 10 of the 13 schools in Taunton have received their POW MIA chairs, thanks to the Veterans Association in Taunton. They are doing a great job, and I know I communicated with 3 of the schools today to reach out to our local vets to schedule their presentations. And I also want to make the school committee aware that I have reached out to New Bedford Public Schools and the Fall River Public School superintendents to ask them for the team chair job description so that we can bring those to you. I'm hoping by I believe we'll have those ready by the second meeting in January. So that's what we're shooting for, along with some other job descriptions that we need to bring before you. So with that concludes my report.
Ms. Doherty, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cabral. I'm delighted that we are moving on the renovation of the alternative high school, so that we've been thinking about that for some time, so that's really terrific. Maybe we can talk next about what we're going to do with that space once it's renovated. Just a couple of comments. I was pleased to see you at the DECA interviews. Myself and Mr. O'Brien and Mr. DeMello also participated in those DECA interviews, and encourage everybody else to do that as time goes on, because it's really a lot of fun to, and I'm sure, Mr. Mr. What's his name sitting over there, Joe Martin, was also there. I think that's it. Did I miss anybody? Mr. Pawlowski was there? Yeah, there you go. So almost everyone was there, and for the rest of us, if you have an opportunity to participate, it would be really, really nice to do that, to see us all there. It was a lot of fun. I generally make it a practice of attending the concerts that are given by our students, and I was disappointed to not have the dates in front of me. And when I finally realized that time was ticking, I sent Mr. Fry an email and asked him what the dates were, and by that time I had missed the high school band and choral concerts. He also sent me the dates of the middle school concerts as well. So maybe going forward in the future, the spring concerts are coming up in the spring, so it would be nice to have that information ahead of time. I know it's posted online on that calendar on the general website, but I personally don't always think about looking there. So I know you started, Mr. Cabral, to give us a list of dates. You gave us a list of dates in November at one of our meetings for multiple kinds of activities in the district, so that would be helpful to have that information. And lastly, I had the pleasure of participating in a POWMIA flag raising today at Lee Terrace, and met Hank Mello, who had, and the group of vets had just come from Friedman School, and thanks to Mr. Souza for the chairs, they were so excited to have participated in placing the chairs in those schools, and as I understand it, 3 more to go, so they'd be very excited that that's going to get done. So thank you, Mr. Souza. Thank you, Mr. Cabral.
Any further discussion?
Motion to accept his report.
All those in favor? Opposed? So voted. Next item is administrative business staffing report.
Receive and place on file.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Next item is field trip request.
Vote approval.
Second.
Okay, motion seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Next item is subcommittee reports. Chairman Martin of the Finance and Law Subcommittee, please.
Financial Law Subcommittee met earlier this evening with myself, Mr. Fiore, Mr. Souza. Also in attendance were Superintendent Cabral and Assistant Superintendent Monahan. First item on the agenda was student activity requests. There weren't any. Second item was bills payable in the amount of $490,035.26. And the last item on the agenda was a facilities update. Ms. Monahan filled us in on water filling stations. All but 2 schools have water filling stations, and those 2 schools will be completed in a short period of time, so that all schools will have water filling stations. The construction meeting yesterday at City Hall regarding Mulcahy School, 52% completed. They gave us a timeline, discussed the timeline of furniture, bidding, the whole 9 yards as far as furnishing that building in a reasonable, timely fashion so that it'll be ready in September. And my comment was the timeline they gave us was similar to the timeline that Mr. Cabral gave us at the last meeting regarding what goes on in the schools. So the 2 areas are obviously coming together. Mr. Souza brought up the issue about having an open house for both Hopewell and Mulcahy before their, well, Hopewell's not going to be torn down, but Mulcahy is going to be torn down. And for people in the community to walk one more time through the building if they went there or worked there or whatever the case may be, if they just want to stroll through the building. And Mr. Cabral has said he's been in contact with the principals, and that is something that's going to happen. And that takes care of the Finance and Law Subcommittee meeting.
Is there
And
a
adopt the
second?
Second.
Mr. DeMello, one discussion, please.
Thank you. I respectfully ask to vote present on page number 4, voucher number 12857, the amount of $320.
I'll make that part of the motion.
Okay. Any further? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Next item is new business. Any new business? Mr. Souza, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to put this under old business. I think it's under new business, because I don't think we talked about it before. And actually, this is not really, this is to the superintendent. I know that we've had a tough time with the weather lately, and I had a question from a parent on the website, and I know most of the parents use one of these, not a computer. You know, this website is mobile compatible. Our website is mobile compatible, but there still seems to be some confusion, at least to me as a member, and I don't know. I'm a pretty good surfer, I have to say, and I'm talking about the internet, not on the waves. We know that. Yeah. But I'm having trouble, and I know the calendar is, the regular calendar, the yearly calendar is like 2 levels deep. I always say, and you know, maybe it's just me, that should be a front page, a main page link to it. But more importantly, if we're going to have a late start, we haven't had an early release, but this also applies to early release. There should be a link right on the main page. If it's a late start, Tier 1 is this, Tier 2 is this, Tier 3 is that. Because, okay, it's delayed by 90 minutes. Well, does the high school start at X time, what is 90 minutes? We should actually lay it right out in simple terms. You know, if a school starts at 8:30 and a 90-minute start is whatever it is on top of that. I'm just saying, it's not something we're doing wrong. I just think it would be helpful to communicate easier to people. They don't have to dig for it. If it's, you know, the school starts at 8 and 45 minutes or whatever it is, 90 minutes or whatever the late start is, this is the time it would start. And that's, I think it's just helpful to have that readily accessible, especially during this inclement weather. And to tag team off of that, if we ever have an early release for whatever the case may be, I think it would be also good to have the protocol right on the main page for that as well. Just a thought.
I
Thank
feel,
you.
I feel like we've had this conversation because I've asked Mrs. Blano, Director of Technology, to look into website formats or website platforms that are more interactive, where you don't have to do as much drilling to get to the information that you need. So that was one of the reasons why during our first 2-hour delay that I posted it on our Twitter page. But I agree, that a lot of information takes too much time and maybe too many steps to drill down and get access to it. I'd rather have icons that you can click on and have the information or a link and have it pop up. So we're looking into a different format or a different website that'll be more interactive, that will involve less drilling to get to the information you need.
Appreciate that. Appreciate the forethought on that, because I think it's helpful. It's helpful not to have to figure out, well, am I on tier 1, tier 2, and move on from there with the time. Thank you, Mr. Cabral.
I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Souza. Mr. Martin, please.
I know this issue has come up several times at a council meeting, but I think it's affecting our schools also, and that is the train. The runnings of the train during the day. I think there were some buses late for Chamberlain this morning because of the train. And on my way here tonight, 5 o'clock, there's a train going through. It wasn't very long, but there's enough traffic in this city at 5 o'clock. We don't need a train going through the center of the city. And I know it's come up at council meetings. People have been held up for like half hour, 40 minutes, which I think is illegal. I don't know how long the bus was held up this morning, but I understand it was late getting to Chamberlain. So maybe we should send something to the council and jump on board with their complaints, that something needs to be done about the train, maybe changing their schedule if it's possible, or breaking the train at some point in time so that vehicles can get through. And one of the comments that was made at a council meeting that I happened to see, which wasn't last night's, I think it was the week before, it's really a problem on Fremont Street. And someone said that if there was an emergency near the industrial park, and if there were public safety was responding through Fremont Street, they wouldn't get through. They'd have to go around. So I think it's an issue, and now it's affecting schools.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Souza, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to add to Mr. Martin's comment, would be if the superintendent has any data as which schools were late or in any consistent patterns, that would be helpful. I think it's good to let them know that it's affecting the school department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Souza.
I'm all set.
All right. No motions on the floor. Any other new business? Ms. Doherty, please.
So I have a motion to offer that I would like to have taken up at the next meeting, probably the second meeting of January, begging the indulgence of the committee. So should I offer it now, read the content of the motion, and then ask to have it put on the agenda for a subsequent meeting so that we can be prepared to deal with it? Or is it under some other category? I always am befuddled by where on the agenda those items come up.
Yes, so you make a motion to refer the topic for a date certain in January.
Okay, so I can do that now under new business? All right, so the recommendation for this motion is that we take it up on the second regular meeting of January, because our first regular meeting is our organizational meeting. And the motion has to do with the charter school that is being planned in the community, and I'll read the motion. I'd like the school committee to go on record as opposed to the proposal contained in a note dated November 8th, 2019, sent to Superintendent Cabral by Thomas Quigley regarding his intention to submit a proposal to the Department of Education to start a charter school in Taunton. Further, that this action be communicated to the Department of Education, all elected officials, organizations, businesses surrounding colleges and universities regarding the impact of a charter school on the Taunton Public Schools. And I'd like that taken up at the meeting as I described, so that we can have a full discussion of that issue.
So would there be a motion to refer it?
Second.
Okay, on discussion, Ms. Almeida, please.
The superintendent has already taken care of that. He's written a letter to, we have a copy of a letter that he wrote to Mr. Quigley. He's spoken to a couple of the colleges already, and I don't understand why we're gonna do that. I'm ready tonight to say that I'm opposed to a charter school in Taunton. I spoke publicly on that in Brockton, as well as some of our other school committee members went to that meeting in Brockton. So I don't know why we need to discuss it, have a big discussion on it. I think we're all opposed to a charter school. The superintendent has already handled that as far as I know. I mean, I can refer to the superintendent, but I had a copy of the letter that he did send already.
I would agree with Mrs. Almeida, but I also want to be cognizant of the fact that we're going to have 2 new board members in January. So I think it would be important to make, we're going to have a new chair, and we'll have Mr. Pulowski officially on. So I would make the recommendation that we wait until January to go on notice formally whether we oppose or that we oppose the charter school.
Mr. DeMello, then Mr. Souza, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mrs. Almeida's statement as far as the colleges and universities, well, I happen to work at a university, as we all know, and the information that I'm hearing in the corridor at the water bubbler is that the information is not accurately disseminated as far as what charter schools are, what impact they have in a financial situation, and actually in an educational situation. So I think that Mrs. Doherty's motion that we do something formally and have a better context of what charter schools are, and I can flood this room with articles and books and authors that Diane Ravitch is one of them, who was Assistant Secretary of Education under Ronald Reagan, I believe, who was all pro-charter schools, who finally came to her senses and said, well, this was what I thought it was going to be, and other different folks in the education world that seem to agree. So I think what Mrs. Doherty's intent for the motion is to definitely make it more formalized. Yes, we have Mr. Pawlowski coming on board and a new mayor, but we sitting here today must take action, because in the university where I sit, and I know there are 2 other, one community college and another university right down the road, are also on the horizon. And I hope that the message is loud and clear. So whatever motion that has been on the floor tonight, I am definitely supporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMello. Mr. Souza, please.
Thank you. I think we've lost sight of the intent that the motion on the floor is to put it on the agenda in January. So the discussion will take place then. We can vote it up, vote it down, or whatever the case may be. That's just to have the discussion then. So it's just to add it to the agenda. So I don't see any, right now I don't see any reason not to add it to the agenda, and we can discuss it as a new board come to meeting in January, and that's what the intent is. And whether the motion passes or whether we're for it or against it, that'll be a discussion then. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor. Hey, I just give you, Mr. Chairman.
I just got promoted.
Your last meeting, but I was
Mr.
going to give you an
Chairman,
elevation.
Chairman, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. And Ms. Doherty, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Souza. That's absolutely my intent. So I also think that, hoping that the motion would go forward in unanimous opposition, we don't know, we go forward with the same information. I had spoken with Mr. Cabral about this previously, and it seemed at the time we talked about it that he was supportive of taking it up at the end of January. So I think that a full-blown discussion would be important with all of the facts, all of the data, so that we can communicate that to the public. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty. Mr. DeMello, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, not to belabor the point, but as time is passing, that note to Superintendent Cabral was when, Ms. Doherty?
November 8th.
So there's been a lot of homework already involved prior to that note coming to the superintendent's office. And of course, January's around the corner. But once again, I stress the importance of a clear, how should I say, point or intent of us as a school committee, whether you're in favor or against it. I know where I stand, but I appreciate the fact that we are taking this up in the second meeting of January. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMello. Ms. Fagan, please.
It's a question for you, Mr. Cabral. Who makes the final decision on where those schools go? Because we all went up to Brockton, and that didn't make any difference.
Desi.
Department of Education.
So, I mean, if they decide that's what they want, there's nothing we can do about it, right? You can protest it too much, but I guess if they ultimately decide.
Correct. Ultimately, the state will make their decision is whether or not a charter school is warranted or there's justification for a charter school in the city of Taunton. But I believe it's very important for us to articulate our position, to discuss why and provide data to demonstrate that our schools are performing, our schools are making progress, and that the reason typically why you would see a charter school is to address a deficiency in a school system or a deficiency in a program, where we believe and we know we have data that can prove that our school system is achieving and a charter school is not warranted or not justified in Taunton.
But ultimately, even if, it doesn't really matter how many people protest, if the state decides they're on board with it, that's it, right?
Correct.
Okay, I was just checking with that.
But again, I believe it's important for everyone to understand what we have done in Taunton, what we plan to do in Taunton, and what we will be doing in Taunton to make sure that our students, receive a 21st century education.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fagan. Mr. Souza, then Mr. DeMello, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to let anyone know that's listening, the reason we can't take it up at this meeting is it's not posted on our agenda. Because of the open meeting law, we have to defer because we're going to vote on it to the next business meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Souza. Mrs. DeMello, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as a point of clarification for Mrs. Fagan's question to the superintendent, as far as the state making the decision, also part of that note was part of a school building that belongs to the city of Taunton. If the state says, yes, it's going forward, are we forced to rent space to the organization on one of our buildings?
Not if our buildings are being used.
Okay, but the Hopewell School I'm talking about,
Yeah, the
will
Hope-
become vacant.
In part of our long-range planning, I mean, we do have needs in our district, and
Which
there are
I chair,
programs.
yes,
right,
okay, all
that we
right.
could utilize that facility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Next item is unfinished business action item updates. We have action item review. Within our packet, we have the action item. There's a letter or a memo to John Cabral from Brenda Moynihan. It's all in our packet relating to the update on the live streaming on the educational channel of your school committee meetings.
So just a quick point of clarification. I don't need to read the memo. It's in your packet. But I think it would be important for me and Mr. Jakes to know, and Mr. Jakes is here. He can provide some input. Not that I want to put Mr. Jakes on the spot. But I think what I need to have clear understanding of, and Mr. Jakes as well, so that we can identify what will be needed for infrastructure, is the desire to simply stream school committee meetings, or is the desire to stream all our programs that we have on Channel 10 24/7? Because I think that will play a difference in the infrastructure and the equipment that Mr. Jakes purchases.
Thank you, Superintendent Cabral. Mr. Souza, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The intent at the beginning was for school committee meetings, but now as we've gotten further information and education from Mr. Jakes, they could take it one step further for educational purposes for the kids, as well as there's a lot of people that are dropping cable, but they still have Wi-Fi or internet access, which means that they could, if we go one step further, we could stream the educational channel 24/7 online, rather than just the school committee meetings. So that means that parents who do not have cable but have access to Wi-Fi, even if you don't have access to Wi-Fi, you could do it right from your 4G. You could get it on your phone, and people could watch the educational channel 24/7. So I think that to me, that would be probably the way to go, especially where we'll be able to teach our students about the new technology.
Thank you, Mr. Souza. Is any-
So my
any-
administration and myself, we will work with Mr. Jakes to bring forth some information regarding streaming educational channel 24/7. Thank you.
No further discussion. Any critical items not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, Ms. Doherty, yeah, I don't think we have a line item on, we have unfinished business. So I guess unfinished would be old.
Yeah, it
Sure.
could be. It could be.
Yeah.
Oh, just 2 points. At the last meeting, we had a brief conversation about the 4 team chairs that were budgeted for in this year's budget, and Mr. Cabral explained that the job description, they hadn't gotten to the job descriptions yet, and I learned that the city of New Bedford has the position of team chair, and Mr. Cabral shared with me his belief that the city of Fall River has team chairs. So I'm thinking, Mr. Cabral, if you're able to access those job descriptions, it just might be easier for our folks to prepare the job descriptions and maybe bring it to us in a first draft sometime at the end of January or the first meeting in February.
Yeah, I actually this afternoon, I reached out to Superintendent Malone and Superintendent Anderson, and I also plan to reach out to Superintendent Thomas in Brockton as well. I know the larger urban districts have had these positions in their system for a few years, so we'll look at their job descriptions, wordsmith, and create our own.
Terrific. And my second thing is that we have a retreat coming up at the end of January, and I'm wondering if the committee might be interested in forming a task force to work with Mr. Cabral to create the agenda for that retreat. Again, in conversation with Mr. Cabral, he can speak for himself, he seemed to be amenable to kind of taking that burden away from him and giving it to us because it is our retreat. So I think that we might want to take that agenda in hand and plan something that is comfortable for us.
It's always been the purview of the chair, working with the superintendent on this, and I don't have a problem with that. The problem is I don't want to make this board ceases to exist very shortly, and we shouldn't be making any decisions here that are going to affect a new board who has 2 new members. That's my only concern. This board ceases to exist, so that's my only concern about something like that ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Souza. Ms. Almeida, then Mr. DeMello, please.
I'm not aware of a retreat in January because there's 3 meetings in January already.
I think it's been on the agenda for some time, actually, for that day. 'Cause I
It was
have
on the common calendar.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Oh, 'cause
it
it's
might
2
be the
things that
committee's
day.
wish not to have it on the 29th.
Yeah, I don't
have no
think
idea.
that's
Yeah,
right.
when we only voted the first half of the calendar because we knew we were going to have a new committee. So that's why we listed the 29th as tentative. And then once the new school board is intact, then we can decide whether or not we want to hold it on the 29th or we can move it to another date. But I will say, I would welcome the opportunity to work with the chair, and if the future chair finds that it's something to bring others into the mix to help plan it. Again, it's having done 2, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time and effort. And I would want to make sure that we come together and provide everyone with a retreat that touches on the topics or the key points that we want to work on moving forward. So I'm not opposed to working as a group. I think collectively we get more done. But I think that hearing Mr. Souza speak, I agree. The new chair should have some input as well.
Thank you.
Mr.
I
Chairman?
got Mr. DeMello and then you.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Yeah,
DeMello.
Yeah, Mr. DeMello, then Mr. Souza, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Exactly my point. I think that collectively we should come together, whether it's called a task force or whatever team you want to call it, again, time is valuable. I'm understanding it's probably going to be an evening event. So, I mean, we come together at 5 o'clock and, we have 4 or 5 hours, but we make it constructive hours. Yes, I have been to retreats in the past that were not so productive, and I said it before, and I'll say it again. So I think that going forward, it's right at the beginning of the year, with the new 2 members, the new mayor and Mr. Paulsky. I think that's very, very important that we formulate something very, very quickly after January 6th, so that January 29th doesn't creep up on us. We have no agenda, we have no idea what we're doing, and it's not a productive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMello. Mr. Souza,
Thank you.
please.
And certainly, you're right, Mr. DeMello, that we should have a guideline and an agenda so we don't waste anyone's time. I agree. this is just a thought, maybe we could, as we go to the first meeting, maybe we could have a handout or submit ideas to the incoming chair for our topics of the retreat, and then the chair could work with the superintendent, and then maybe bring other members in. Just a thought to start the ball rolling right then and there. Or could take it a number of different ways, but that's just a thought.
Ms.
Well,
Doherty,
thank
please.
you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Souza.
Souza.
While I appreciate the thought, one would imagine that the school committee would give input to what they wanted to do during a meeting. We have had, the superintendent has always reached out, the chair has reached out in the past to say to committee members, if you have any ideas, send me an email and we'll incorporate them or attempt to incorporate them. And you do that as well in the parent university to ask for input. But to your point, Mr. Cabral, there's nothing more my opinion, more energizing than coming together and having a conversation about wants and needs and then reaching agreement so that we are having a retreat that really speaks to the business that we need to undertake. I think that there are a lot of issues that we need to discuss and regarding our organization, the way in which we function, and other kinds of things that are going on in our schools, that it's worth bringing an ad hoc committee, not necessarily a task force, to come together to plan that meeting. So I think, to your point, a new committee, we might wait until that organizational meeting in January to revisit the question of establishing that ad hoc committee.
Okay. Yes, Mr. DeMello, please.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is it possible that, I know Mr. Pawlowski's sitting right in front of us, at the conclusion of the organizational meeting, we can already have these notes in hand so that the new chair could start working on it, like on January 9th? Again, I mean, January's gonna fly. I mean, you know, days fly, and it's not fair to Mr. Cabral to be, everybody sending stuff in on January 17th or 19th, and then we have a meeting 10 days later. We have no plan. So is that even possible to just kind of not formalize it, but talk about it today, the January 8th, we have issues in hand? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMello. Mr. Souza, please.
With the lack of a chair till the 8th, I think probably just make it an agenda item on the 8th, that besides the organization, we discuss the retreat. That could.
So you're recommending to place an
But we can't vote on it because we're voting on something that affects the new committee, so it's kind of a conundrum. So.
we can make a recommendation to the new committee.
That's right.
Take it up.
That's right.
In the meantime, send me
Voted on
topics.
something for point of information. You
Go
just
ahead.
voted on something that you're gonna put on the agenda in January. So you can do this too. You can put this on an agenda, Mr. Souza. We're still committee. The only thing that you cannot encumber a new committee on is monetary. Anything else you can encumber the new committee to continue. And in all due respect, we do have a chairman until January 6th. Okay? January 6th is Mr.
Whether he likes it or not, that's what
Mr. O'Brien's last day. When the new committee gets sworn in, he's still the chairman until that day.
Send you my email tonight, Mr. Chairman.
So we can have like several special meetings in between.
Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is that we put an agenda item that has to do with the school committee retreat on the organizational, the first meeting, which is the 8th.
Yeah, and I actually had, so that's a motion or just recommendation, or do you want,
Motion.
my other question is, do you want to submit, under the organizational subcommittee, you could actually create that ad hoc committee at that
Correct.
day? So you could do it all at once and then set a date
That's
certain?
what the discussion's for, to see if we
So-
need
So
it.
if
You
I
even
may,
wanna do that, yeah.
could we direct the school committee secretary to add an extra item for ad hoc retreat subcommittee on the organizational
Well-
report? And then that way there you could pick 3 people to be on that committee. How's that?
Well, we just created the committee. What my motion was gonna be to discuss the retreat, which also had to do with that.
The organizational subcommittee has the opportunity to create any new committees.
Right,
And so that could be one of them.
and then if we discuss the retreat, that wraps the whole thing up.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. DeMello, then Ms. Doherty, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we all bring together comments, questions, whatever, to January 8th organizational
Bless you.
subcommittee meeting to plan for the January 29th retreat. That's my motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, any discussion on the motion as presented? Ms. Doherty had her hand up as well. Would you like to speak to that or after? All right. No further discussion on the motion to bring all the items to the January 8th meeting for a date certain 29th retreat. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Ms. Doherty, please. Okay. All right. So I'm good. All right. I'm not even gonna ask. All right. Any other critical items not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance? All right, press time. Charlie Winocor. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
No,
All right. Terry
we need
Quinn.
to say goodbye to you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think I have to set the agenda for the 8th, don't I? I'm going to call a special meeting on the 1st of January, 9 a.m.
That's not legal, it's a holiday.
I know.
This is your last meeting, Mr. Chairman.
I think so.
Unfortunately, I remember about, I don't know, 11 and a half years ago, we sat down and you said, I'm going to run for school committee. And I was very excited to have some new blood on this committee and someone as smart and caring about children as you are. And I know it's going to be a loss to have you leave. You have been an asset to our committee. You've been a voice of reason when sometimes we get hot-tempered. You kind of bring things down. You put things into perspective in a very good way. And I, for one, will be very sad to see you leave. We have a few little things here for you. First of all, we have your golden apple.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don't try to eat it.
Don't try to eat it, because you're not going to be able to. But it's a nice little momentum that you can put on your desk or whichever you do.
And throw it around at DPW. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate this.
And we also have a plaque. It says, Carl O'Brien, in recognition of your years of dedicated service as a member and chairperson of the school committee. Your term has been from January 6th, 2006 to December of 2019. And this is a plaque for you.
Thank you very much.
And you do have a gavel coming. It didn't come in on time.
Thank you very
But you will
much.
have a gavel. And we thank you for everything that you've done for us and all the committees you've served on. And I know that you're going to have a good time now with your children and your wife and doing your little paddle boating and
Paddle,
fishing
yes.
and everything else. And I'm sure everybody else on the committee wants to say something to you too. But I, for one, am going to miss you, and I wish you the best of luck. And I know that you're going to do the best job ever, because that's the job of a father and a husband, and that's what you want to be.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Auntie Jody.
And Cahal has been like one of my boys since high school, so it's been kind of tough to see him leave. He
Thank
lifted weights, and
Yes.
he was a very good student, so.
Thank you.
Mrs.
Yes,
Doherty.
Ms. Doherty, please. Yes.
Well, I did just to echo Jody's words, you have been a steady hand on the tiller. You have been the voice of reason. You've stepped in to settle some contentious issues along the way, whether you were sitting in the chair or as a member of the board. So I, for 9, will miss you, but you'll be around town and in our school buildings, banging on the pipes and digging the holes and preventing the water from spurting forth. So we'll see you around, but greatly missed on this board. Thank you for all you've done.
Thank you very much. Mr. Souza, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's too bad I have to say that for one of the last times.
Well, you were calling me Mr. Mayor earlier.
Yeah, I was calling you
That was
Mr.
kind of
Mayor.
nice.
We go way back. I just think this leaves a huge void on this committee. Your voice as a parent, as a community member, your knowledge, always there to lend a hand. I've leaned on you heavily for the last 10 years. You've always been there as far as taking phone calls, discussing issues. We spent many a night, sometimes a late night, in negotiations that took a toll, but we got through it, and we had a lot of discussions during those times about all kinds of subject matters. And we've done a lot of good. You've done a lot of good for the kids, and that's something you should be proud of. You stepped in a time that was not the best for Taunton when you first got elected, but you showed leadership. You jumped in and you righted the ship, and for that, I think the kids will always be thankful, and obviously the citizens of Taunton. Good luck in the future. We all love your family. You know how much your family means to you, and believe me, your family means a lot to us, and we've watched the kids grow up, and it's great that you're going to be able to spend more time with them and the wife. That's just awesome. And the best of luck, and I know I'll see you during your day job. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Souza. Mr. Martin, I believe.
Well, neighbor,
Hi, neighbor. Hi, Uncle
you
Joe.
came on board when I retired,
Yes. Yes.
so you get to be my boss for 6 months.
Co-workers.
But I appreciate everything you've done for this committee. What Ms. Doherty said, what Ms. Almeida said, all true, and I'm not going to repeat everything, but you certainly have steered the ship in the right direction many times as a chairman and as a member. And we don't share the same late nights as you did the bargaining, but you scare the hell out of me when I go to put the trash out at 11 o'clock at night and you're running up and down the street.
Walking now, but yeah.
But I wish you the best, and I'll certainly see you often.
Yes, thank
Probably
you.
more often than,
Yes, much more.
And I've
This is
seen you lately.
recycle week. Don't forget, we have blue bins out this week. General Carbon Couch, we put the bins out this week.
but
Thank
again,
you.
good luck.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin.
Cahal, I just want to say thank you. It's been a privilege. It's been an honor to work with you on the public school side, and also on the DPW side, and also on the water side. I can honestly say that in the time that I've seen you as a principal on the school board, assistant superintendent, the one thing that I've noticed is that you've always acted with integrity. You've always stood for what you believe is true, and you have a very unique ability that many people don't have to see both sides and bring people to consensus. And I think that's what this board will deeply miss going forward, is your unique perspective, and also your very, very dry sense of humor, and all those Jeopardy facts that you tend to rattle off. I know I will miss that, because that's always during tense situations. That would always loosen things up and liven things up, and bring us back to what's important, which is the work. So I appreciate the fact that you take your work serious, but you don't take yourself serious, and that is something that I admire and like to see myself doing more of. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Cabral. Mr. Fiore, please.
Well, this has been a very special relationship, because due to my rather odd career trajectory, where I've been back and forth between here and Cityside a couple of times, I've had the opportunity to work with Cahal in several capacities. I was on the council when he was the conservation director, served with him here, was on the council and in the law department with him in the water department, and worked with him very extensively with that, and then had a chance to come back here. Also because of that odd trajectory, he started after I did, but he has more seniority than I do because he was here more. It's been like a family thing, even more so now because our wives work together. So we'll still have that connection. I mean, I remember being involved with Al before Sophie was born. He put off his candidacy for school committee to take care of baby issues before he he finally came to us. And it is going to be very different not having him here, but again, as everybody else has said, he's going to be around town quite a bit and still very much a part of city government, and I know we're still going to have him to rely on, and I hope we're still going to have opportunity for those long chats. He and I both do Jeopardy questions, so we can go at it for hours. I hope we still have the opportunity for that. But thank you for all the years you've put in, and I look forward to the future.
Thank you, Mr. Fury. Mr. DeMello, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So approximately about 8 years ago, I was in a jam with my new home, and construction was going on, and water wasn't connected. And little did I ever imagine that I would be serving on the board with a gentleman that was able to facilitate and make things happen so quickly. And that leads up to present day, where I've always respected you for your integrity, your love of family, your love of nature, and everything that you've done for our community. And as a freshman member, I've learned a lot from you and my colleagues, of course, but you as chairman, we've had many talks on the phone, always very, very responsive and guiding me in doing the best I can do for the students and the citizens of Taunton. I do have one request. I still want to go paddleboarding with you. I'll be wearing 3 or 4 life jackets, just in case.
I have 2 boards matching, green,
Pontoons.
lime, green. There's
So
a beautiful new boat ramp on West Water
I
Street.
will take you up on that as soon as the weather gets a little bit better. And best of luck to you, and I'm sure I'll see you throughout the city. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fagan? Now you want to pass? Auntie Christine?
Auntie, really? Cahal and I, we go back quite a ways because his daughter, his oldest daughter, and my grandson, who was here tonight, are both juniors at Taunton High School, and I believe they're, what are they, a couple of days apart?
Yes, they were.
You
I
and
believe
your
we
wife?
saw each other at the hospital in 2003.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yes.
And so they're both, and they're friends, so, which is nice, you know, it's nice to see that relationship continue. I did say some goodbyes to you at the National Honor Society night, so I wanted everybody
Thank
to
you.
know that that was your last Honor Society night as a school committee member, but not as a parent.
I'll be there next year, hopefully, if Sophie Station. You can't get kicked out.
But I'm gonna miss it because you and I are heavily science-minded, and used to be me, you, and Mr. Faulkner. You're in that department, aren't you, Nate? Science? Is that what you major in college?
Chemical engineering.
Okay.
It's kind of scientific. That's kind of scientific.
Kind of science. We were both in the biological sciences, but I can deal with chemical engineering. I think those of us that do that just have an entirely different mindset, and we always understood one another, and
Yes.
he was, at one time he was telling me about a book he had that he let somebody borrow and he lost, and it was all about water. And I said, and he thought it was one title, and I actually found it on eBay.
Yes.
And bought it for him because I wanted him to have the book, and I bought myself a copy.
We'll
too.
tell the whole story. It was my dad's book. I lost it, and he wanted it back, so I had to give it back to my father. So you really hooked me up because my dad has his book back. Yeah, thank you.
But anyway, we shared a lot of books that we both really enjoyed because we both had that biological science background. So Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, How Civilizations Develop. But we used to have some really nice, interesting talks, and I'd go to see him at the water plant in Dayton and got the
And
whole
you
tour
brought
of the
muffins?
plant. And I mean, I came out of there smelling like a bottle of Clorox bleach, but it was awesome. I mean, I'm gonna miss the way that you could always take something, for those if nobody understood what you were saying, you always had some visual. And I'd say, how does he do this all the time? But it was always great that you could do that, and then people could relate to what you had to say. So I'm gonna miss you a lot, but I know where you are, so I'm gonna go visit you anyway, so I hope you don't mind. But
No,
you've been a
thank you.
wonderful friend. You're about the same age as my oldest son, and I love my kids, and they're also my friends, but I never thought I could get friendly with somebody a lot younger than me, and you and I have been wonderful friends. So
Yes.
I hope that stays the same, and I wish you all the best. And I know you love your family and want to be with them, so God bless you. You know, my husband always says when a job stops being fun, it's time to stop the job. And if as long as it's fun, it's fun. But when it starts to interfere with other things in your life, I can understand why, But I'm going to miss you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
school committee, hold your apple.
Yeah, all right, yes.
Hold your plaque.
And I just want to say thanks to everybody. I appreciate, no, I'll do last words. You don't have to get up, Ms. Brenda. I've known Brenda a couple of years as well. I think they're about like 2 years? Or is it 25? I can't remember. Well, you're not 20, maybe 20.
It's more than 25.
No, you can't say that. I'm not, it's 12. 12.
No, you've been out of
I'm a
school
lot
more
older
than
than
20.
her. I was a teacher for her when she was in high school.
No, you
No, I wasn't, but it sounded good. No, I want to thank all of you. I really appreciate it. I'm usually the one announcing, like, oh, speak next. I much prefer service over celebrity. 15 years ago, actually, I ran. It was Bob Campbell and I were talking. 16 years ago, we both pulled papers and didn't put back in. My original idea to run for school committee was because when I was conservation agent, I have a different name, and everyone remembered who I was. We met every Monday night, so Bob Campbell, very good mentor of mine, former city engineer, said, well, they'll know who you were because you're the only caller they know. So 2 years later, I brought the courage up and decided to run. Never envisioned I'd be an elected official. Anyone who knew me growing up, I'm not from this country, but I grew up here in Whittington in the Weir, and my childhood friends, one of them whose son was here tonight for baseball, they'd laugh. It's hilarious because they said, you? What are you doing? But I'll say thank you for the kind words. My unique perspective and my eccentricities, I never appreciated them as much till I joined a group like this. In a legislative body, you need diversity, not just the buzzword diversity, but of perspective and understanding. Because there are lots of people like each and every one of us who see things differently. And I meet a lot of people and didn't appreciate it till, as I've come to the end of my term currently, is that you need a voice for everybody. Don't be afraid to ask the silly questions. Don't be afraid not to get excited when things are real heated, if it doesn't make sense, if there's really, there's a lot to it. So I won't go on and on. Introverts like me talk a long time because it takes a while for us to figure it out. I want to thank, though, Ed Texera, Dick Faulkner, Peter Core, Al Baptista, Barry Cooperstein, Janice Nowak, Diane Huggin. I don't think I'm forgetting one. Anyway, am I, Monty? Because those people, I remember the first time I ran, I sat next to Peter Core, another good mentor. And I remember I used to sit next to the plant because I came in like second, and so I had to be humbled as they put me in the corner. And I got to sit next to Peter, which was a great teaching because Peter, apparently the side I sat on couldn't hear as well, so I was able to give him the calls and says it was great. It was good because it taught me humility, where you got one of the most celebrated public servants in my lifetime, and he was humble and he knew everybody. And Peter was such a good mentor to me for that because he could talk to a janitor, the crossing guard, the governor, the mayor, and everybody was his buddy. And he was sincere in it. And joking with him on the corner of the table when you all were starting to deliberate, and I was trying to understand. We'd go to high school graduation. He knew every kid's grandparents. And he was like, hey, remember, tell your grandmother, Mary Lou. And I was just amazed by such humility from such a guy who popular. Ed Tech, Coach Texera and Dick Faulkner, rest their souls, they were so good as former coaches and teachers and principals. They really understood, and I know it as a city employee. It's intimidating to come before the local legislative body because all 8 of us want to reanalyze what you just presented, and they brought that perspective as school committee members, and I was always very grateful to see that because sometimes they would get angry when we were asking questions, say, well, you've never been a principal, you don't understand. They don't need to come and do a dog and ponies, and not that we do that, but they brought great humility. Al Baptista and Barry Cooperstein were great elected officials. They would have some very heated debates. They brought a lot of vitality to the committee, and it was good for me to see as a new member passion and debate. And it was real, and they really believed in what they said, and they wore it on their sleeves. And both of those people I owe a lot to. Diane Huggin and Janice Nowak were like the top shelf. Remember Janice? She said, act like you've been there before. I used to really, enjoy. She was very, a lot of class and a lot of respect, and she wanted us to respect what we had, the opportunity to serve, and respect the staff. Teachers were professionals. They were supposed to be looked at with a certain level of respect, and when they spoke, they were to be spoken to properly. And they knew their craft, and even if you disagreed with them, you had to respect them. A teacher is a master. And Diane Huggin took this stuff very, very seriously. She had a unique perspective like I do, particularly with special education, and she wore her heart on her sleeve, and she was very articulate and very serious. And I believe we owe the configuration of our table to Ms. Huggin, if I'm not mistaken, because she used to remind us we meet in the public, not for the public. We were supposed to do the public business. I might be saying that backwards. But each and every one, and all of you, as you said tonight, and I could put us all to sleep, but each of you have taught me many, many things. We've become friends, and I've really valued it. And the last one I want to thank is Bob Murray. We used to drink black coffee in the back. Before I ran, I used to sit in all the meetings in the back, just because I didn't understand the protocol, how it worked. Because I'm not, I wasn't really, my entry to city politics was this. And so Bob and I would have black coffee in the back, and he was very, very good to me. And as a former director of special ed, he was an incredible, like the everyman, like the Greek man or whatever it is. He would put pools up in the summer. He'd run special ed all year, and he'd been around long enough to know you have to have a cool head, be a voice of reason, and don't be the first one to jump in the pool when something's going on. You got to pull them out slow. And he mentored me from early on, and some real interesting things I watched as the committee. And Mr. Souza said, I came on when, we went from status quo of a historical transition to complete dynamic change within my first exposure was sitting with Jackie Gorey and Bob Murray and Terry, no, it was the cop. He's a cop now, he's a reporter. Not Dermody. Downing. We sat in the back and watched the election of the superintendent 2 superintendents ago. And that was my first introduction in how the dynamics of public service works. And I'll always give Terry credit. He called that right away. He knew it. And I walked Jackie Gorey to her car that evening. I remember I put my baseball hat in the door so I could get back in. That was before fobs. And I got my hat back on. I came upstairs, and Terry said, watch this. And he said it, and I sat, and that was my first education in what it takes to get public service done. So long story short, I want to thank you all. It's been a humbling, wonderful experience. I'll still be one of your clients. I'm like here at Club for Men. I'm not only the president, I'm the client. I have 2 daughters, and I'm very grateful for the opportunities they've had. Both of my daughters have benefited incredibly. My oldest, who's traditional academic student-athlete young lady, has been in like 6 different schools because of redistricting, so it was very nice to see, not nice, but it was humbling for me to have her go through that much transition, even though I'm Mr. Elected Official. And she's doing brilliantly at Taunton High School. I won't use a name because she'll be embarrassed, but she does fantastic, not just in sports and academics, in DECA. She loves the high school. She's there like 6-7 days a week since 8th grade, and she thinks that's normal. I'm very grateful for that as a parent. My youngest daughter has had significant challenges ever since the day she was born, and yet she's been served incredibly well by Taunton Public Schools. And as a parent of a special needs student, oftentimes we're intimidated, overwhelmed, completely angry, and paranoid. So I know how they feel, and I've seen both sides of it, and I want to tell all of you, the staff you have do a great job in a very sensitive, difficult subject. And it doesn't get easier as our children get older with special needs. It gets harder. And yet the schools still meet us halfway, which is about all, that's the best you can ask for in terms of trying to partnership up with, government, if you will. And I still will be serving and volunteering as much as I can in the Taunton Public Schools. And you all know my work cell. If there's a water break or whatever, just give us a call. So with that, my term is complete. Thank you. Yes, I need to borrow a pen to sign the field trip request. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. All those in favor? Adjourn.